What would you do if the only people who could save your child were the ones society taught you to fear? The heavy metal door of the Iron Horse's bar and grill weighed more than 7-year-old Amara Jefferson. But when you're running out of options, you find strength you didn't know existed. It was Tuesday, October 14th, 3:47 p.m. Amara had been standing outside that bar for 20 minutes, watching bearded men in leather jackets walk in and out. Her pink backpack with unicorn stickers pressed against her back. Her school uniform was torn at the left sleeve, and if you look closely, you could see dried blood on the white fabric. Inside her backpack was a note she'd written in purple crayon the night before. She'd practiced what she would say 17 times in her bedroom mirror. But now, standing here, her words felt stuck in her throat like peanut butter. The rumble of motorcycles made the ground shake under her small feet. More bikers arriving. More strangers who looked nothing like the heroes in her picture books. These men had skulls on their jackets, tattoos covering their arms. Some had scars on their faces that told stories she was too young to understand. But Amara had noticed things other people missed. 2 weeks ago, when Mrs. Chen fell on the sidewalk and broke her hip, it wasn't the businessmen in suits who stopped to help. It was Jerome, a biker with a gray beard down to his chest, who held her hand until the ambulance came. Last month, when the Martinez family's car died in the middle of the street, it was 3 bikers who pushed it to safety and fixed it for free. And every Christmas, these scary-looking men dressed up as Santa and delivered toys to kids whose parents couldn't afford presents. Maybe scary on the outside didn't mean scary on the inside. Amara touched her left arm where Cody Brennan had pushed her down that morning. The concrete had torn through her sleeve and skin. The school nurse had cleaned it, but she'd also asked questions Amara couldn't answer truthfully. How did this happen, sweetheart? I fell. Were you pushed? No, ma'am. Lying felt like swallowing glass, but telling the truth would be worse. The last time her mother complained to the school, Dale Brennan had shown up at their apartment. He hadn't come inside. He just stood in the hallway, letting Jasmine Jefferson know he knew where they lived. Your mother works a lot of jobs, he'd said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Be a shame if her employers heard she was causing trouble, making false accusations. Some might call that defamation of character. Courts take that seriously. The message was clear. Fight back and lose everything. Amara's mother worked from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. cleaning hospital floors. Then 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. stocking grocery shelves. Weekends at the nursing home, giving baths to old people who'd forgotten their own names. Also, they could afford this apartment in the good school district. Also, Amara could have better chances than she'd had. But what good were better chances if you were too scared to walk to school? The door opened. Music spilled out. Loud guitars and drums. The smell of cigarette smoke and something else, like the garage where her uncle used to fix cars before he died. A man stepped out and Amara's heart nearly stopped. Marcus, Tank Rodriguez. Everyone in the neighborhood knew Tank. 6 feet, 4 inches tall. 300 pounds. Arms thicker than Amara's entire body. President of the Iron Horse's motorcycle club. The kind of man parents warn their children to stay away from. Tank lit a cigarette, then noticed her. His forehead creased. Amara's legs felt like jelly. But she thought about that morning, about Cody's gang surrounding her, about Emma pulling her backpack so hard she fell, about Tyler laughing, about Brandon recording it on his phone, about Cody leaning down and whispering, "Tomorrow, we make it worse and worse until you disappear." "No, sir," Amara said, her voice tiny but clear. "I'm exactly where I need to be." Tank dropped his cigarette and crushed it under his boot. "Where are your parents?" "My mom's at work." "And she knows you're here?" Amara didn't answer that. Instead, she said, "Mr. Rodriguez, I need to come inside. I need to talk to you and your friends." Tank's eyebrows shot up. This little girl knew his name, and she was asking to enter a biker bar, alone. "How old are you?" 7. And what could a 7-year-old possibly need from us? Amara reached into her backpack and pulled out the folded paper. Her hand shook as she held it up. "I need you to read this, please." Tank took the paper, unfolded it, read the purple crayon words that would change everything. My name's Amara Jefferson. Will you please walk me to school so I feel safe? I know you help people. I've seen it. I'm scared and nobody else will listen. Please. Tank looked from the note to Amara's face. That's when he saw it. The bruise on her left cheek, partially hidden by her dark skin. The way she held her injured arm. The look in her eyes that said she was drowning and he might be the only lifeline left. Who hurt you? His voice had gone from suspicious to protective in 3 words. Amara's bottom lip trembled. If you tell me, will you help me? Tank knelt down, bringing his massive frame to her eye level. This close she could see that his scary face had kind eyes. Brown, like her dad's had been before he died in Afghanistan. Little one, why don't you come inside and tell us everything? He stood and pushed open the heavy door. Rock music poured out. 40 bikers turned to stare. The room went dead silent. And 7-year-old Amara Jefferson walked into that bar, not knowing she was about to change 300 lives. Every head in the Iron Horses bar turned toward the door. 40 grown men, some with criminal records, some with combat experience, all froze at the sight of a 7-year-old black girl in a torn school uniform standing in their sanctuary. Someone hit pause on the jukebox. The only sounds were the hum of the beer cooler and Amara's rapid breathing. Brothers, Tank said, his voice carrying across the silent room. This is Amara Jefferson. She has something to tell us. A biker named Diesel, neck thick as a tree trunk, stood up from his pole game. Tank, what's a kid doing in here? Asking for help, Tank replied. He guided Amara to a table in the center of the room. Someone quickly moved beer bottles out of sight. Another biker threw his leather jacket over a calendar that wasn't appropriate for 7-year-old eyes. Amara sat in a chair that made her look even smaller. Her feet didn't touch the ground. Tank sat across from her, and slowly the other bikers formed a circle. Not threatening, protective. Tell us what happened, Tank said, gently. Amara started from the beginning. 3 weeks ago, I was happy. I love school. My teacher, Mrs. Williams, said I was her best reader. I had friends. I played hopscotch at recess and shared my cookies at lunch. Her voice was steady, like she'd rehearsed this. Maybe she had. Lying in bed hoping someone would finally listen. Then, Cody Brennan noticed me. Several bikers exchanged glances. Everyone knew the Brennan name. Dale Brennan owned 3 car dealerships, had his face on billboards around town, donated money to the police department, the untouchable family. His dad told him I don't belong at Riverside Elementary, said I should go back to where I came from. Where you came from? Diesel asked, confused. The projects, Amara said simply. The black school. That's what Mr. Brennan calls it. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. First day, Cody pushed me on the playground. Mrs. Patterson was watching, but she said it was an accident. Boys being boys. Tank's knuckles cracked as his fists tightened. Then, Cody got friends to help. Tyler's parents are getting divorced and he's angry all the time. Brandon just does whatever Cody says. And Emma used to be the smallest kid until I came. Now she's happy it's not her anymore. Amara pulled up her sleeve, showing the fresh wound from that morning. They're smart. They hurt me where cameras can't see. They whisper things so teachers can't hear. When I tell, they say I'm lying, that I'm looking for attention, that maybe I have adjustment issues. Your mother knows? Asked Jerome, the biker who had helped Mrs. Chen. She tried to help, went to Principal Harrison. He said kids need to work out their differences. Then she asked to meet with Cody's parents. Amara's voice got quieter. Mr. Brannon came to our apartment, told my mom to be careful, said making accusations could be called slander, said he'd hate to see a single mother facing legal trouble, said she might lose her jobs if her employers heard she was causing problems. That son of a... Someone started. Language, Tank cut him off, nodding toward Amara. My mom can't fight him, Amara continued. She works 3 jobs. We barely pay rent. If she loses even one job,
We lose our home. So she told me to be strong, to ignore them, that it would get better. But it didn't, Tank said. It wasn't a question. This morning, Mrs. Chen couldn't walk me to school because of her hip. Mom had already left for work. I had to walk alone. Amara's hands trembled as she continued. They were waiting behind the big oak tree on Maple Street. Cody, Tyler, Brandon, and Emma. They made a circle around me. The bikers leaned in, hanging on every word. Cody said I had to leave the school. Said if I came back tomorrow, accidents would keep happening, worse ones. I said no. I said it was my school too. Pride flickered across several faces. This tiny girl had stood up to her tormentors. That's when he pushed me. Hard. I fell and cut my arm. They laughed. Cody said, accidents happen when you don't listen. Then they left me there. Why didn't you go to the police? Asked a biker named Crow. Tank answered for her. Because a black kid's word against the richest white family in town? How do you think that goes? Silence. They all knew exactly how that would go. So you came here, Tank said to Amara. I watched you, all of you. You look scary, but you do good things when nobody's watching. You helped Mrs. Chan, you fixed the Martinez car, you brought presents to kids last Christmas. Term their club reserved for family. We're going to do more than walk you to school once. He pulled out his phone and opened the Iron Horses group chat. Started typing. What are you doing? Diesel asked. Calling in the cavalry. Tank's message was simple. Emergency run, Riverside Elementary. Tomorrow morning, 7:30 a.m. A little sister needs us. This is not a drill. Within seconds, responses flooded in. Not just from their chapter, from every chapter within 100 miles. The Steel Phoenixes, the Road Warriors, the Crimson Riders, clubs that normally kept to their own territory, all responding to one 7-year-old's call for help. Tank showed Amara his phone screen. The number of confirmed riders kept climbing. 50, 100, 150. Is that enough friends for you? Tank asked with a smile. But before Amara could answer, the bar door burst open. Jasmine Jefferson stood there, still in her grocery store uniform, eyes wild with panic. Amara, what are you doing here? I got a call from Mr. Brennan saying you were seen entering a biker bar. Jasmine Jefferson's hands shook as she stared at her daughter, sitting among 40 leather-clad bikers. Her mind raced through every worst-case scenario a mother could imagine. Amara, get up. We're leaving now. Tank stood, his massive frame blocking Jasmine's path to her daughter. Not threatening, but protective. Miss Jefferson, my name is Marcus Rodriguez. Your daughter came here for help. I think you need to hear what she has to say. I know who you are, Jasmine said, her voice tight. Everyone knows Tank Rodriguez, and I know Del Brennan just called my manager at the grocery store telling her I let my 7-year-old wander into dangerous places. I could lose my job because of this. Mom, Amara started. Not now, baby. Jasmine's eyes stayed locked on Tank. We're going home. He threatened you, Tank said quietly. Brennan called your work the second Amara walked in here. That's not coincidence. That's surveillance. The words hit Jasmine like cold water. What are you talking about? Someone's been watching you, watching Amara. They knew she came here within minutes. Why would Dale Brennan care where a 7-year-old goes after school, unless he's monitoring her? Jasmine's face went pale. Tank pulled out a chair. Please, sit, listen to your daughter, really listen. Then decide if you want to leave. Jasmine looked at Amara, who had tears streaming down her face. She'd never seen her baby look so desperate, so hopeful and terrified at the same time. 5 minutes, Jasmine said, sitting down. Then we're gone. Amara told her mother everything. Not the edited version she'd been giving for weeks. The whole truth. Every shove, every threat, every time an adult had failed to see what was happening right in front of them. When you complained to Principal Harrison, Mr. Brennan came to our door the next day. I heard him threaten you through
On the back of her head, where Emma had yanked her hair so hard a chunk came out. They're smart, Mama. They know what adults will believe. White kids horsing around? Just accidents. Black kid complaining? She's sensitive, making trouble, looking for attention. Diesel spoke up. My nephew goes to that school, different grade. He told me about the Jefferson girl getting picked on, said the teachers ignore it, said it's been happening since she started. Jasmine looked at him. Why didn't you say something? Because I'm an ex-con with a record. Who's gonna listen to me over Dale Brennan? Diesel's voice was bitter. Same reason you didn't push harder. System's rigged. Jerome added, my sister's kid got bullied out of Riverside 3 years ago. Hispanic family. Same story. Complaints ignored. Parents threatened. Eventually, they just moved to a different district. How many kids? Jasmine asked quietly. That we know about, Tank said. 7 in the last 5 years. All minorities, all pushed out quietly. School keeps its test scores high, keeps its reputation clean, keeps its wealthy white families happy. Jasmine stood up, walked to her daughter, and pulled her into a fierce hug. Baby, why didn't you tell me it was this bad? Because you're tired, Mama. You worked so hard for us. I didn't want to make things worse. You are 7 years old. 7! It's not your job to protect me. It's my job to protect you. And I failed. No, you didn't, Amara said. You gave me everything. A home, food, nice clothes, good school. I just need one more thing. What's that? I need to feel safe walking there. Tank cleared his throat. Miss Jefferson, Amara asked us to walk her to school. Just once. Show these kids she has backup. Maybe scare them enough to leave her alone. And you think that'll work? You think Dale Brennan would just accept bikers showing up at the school? I think Dale Brennan has been getting away with this because nobody pushed back. Because people like you can't afford lawyers. People like us aren't believed. But what if we show up anyway? 300 of us. 300? Jasmine looked at Tank's phone, seeing the still climbing confirmations. 287 now. Word travels fast in our community. Little sister needs protection. Everyone comes. Jasmine sank back into her chair. This could make everything worse. Brennan could sue, could get me fired, could get Amara expelled. Or, Tank said, it could make the news, social media, go viral, put pressure on the school to actually do their job, make it too expensive for Brennan to keep threatening you. You're talking about using my daughter as bait. I'm talking about standing up for your daughter when nobody else will. The bar was silent except for the hum of the beer cooler. Amara looked at her mother with eyes that had seen too much for 7 years. Mama, I'm already bait. I've been bait for 3 weeks. Tomorrow, Cody promised to make it worse. What if worse means hospital? What if worse means I don't come home? Jasmine felt her heart shatter. She'd brought her daughter to this good school, thinking it would give her opportunities. Instead, she delivered her to predators. If we do this, Jasmine said slowly, there's no going back. Brennan will come after us with everything. Let him try, Tank said. We've dealt with men like him before. Rich, powerful, used to getting their way. They fold when people stop being afraid. I'm terrified, Jasmine admitted. Good, said a biker named Chains. Fear means you're smart. But being smart doesn't mean staying quiet while your baby gets tortured. Amara reached across the table and took her mother's hand. I was brave enough to walk in here alone. Can you be brave enough to let them help? Jasmine looked around the room. 40 men who should have been terrifying. But they looked kind of protective fury that reminded her of her own father, that 10 years now. He'd been a Marine. Would have loved these guys.
What exactly happens tomorrow? Jasmine asked. Tank laid it out. We meet at your apartment at 7 a.m. We walk Amara to school. All of us. No bikes, too intimidating. Just boots on pavement. We make sure every student, every teacher, every parent sees that this little girl has an army. And then? And then we volunteer. Crossing guards, reading tutors, fundraiser organizers. We become so embedded in that school, they can't get rid of us without explaining why they're rejecting community help. The Brennans will lose their minds. The Brennans, Tank said coldly, will learn that rich doesn't mean untouchable. Jasmine closed her eyes. Thought about the hospital bills from when Amara was born. The second job she took to pay them off. The third job to afford this apartment. The exhaustion that lived in her bones. All of it to give Amara a better life. And here was her daughter, beaten and scared, asking strangers for the protection her own mother couldn't provide. Okay, Jasmine whispered. We do it. Amara threw her arms around her mother's neck. Tank nodded to his brothers. Plans were made. Calls went out. The machine of the iron horses began to move. But as mother and daughter prepared to leave, Jasmine's phone rang. Dale Brennan's name on the screen. She answered. Put it on speaker. Miss Jefferson, I heard your daughter visited some unsavory characters today. I wanted to personally warn you that having your child associate with known criminals reflects poorly on your judgment. The school board might question whether Riverside is the right fit for Amara. Jasmine looked at Tank, at the men who'd shown her daughter more kindness in an hour than the school had in 3 weeks. Mr. Brennan, she said, her voice steady for the first time in months. My daughter can associate with whoever she wants, and tomorrow you're going to meet all of them. She hung up. The bikers erupted in cheers. But Amara noticed something nobody else saw. Through the bar's front window, a black SUV sat across the street, watching, waiting. October 14th, 6:47 a.m. Jasmine Jefferson stood at her apartment window, coffee shaking in her hand. She'd been awake all night, alternating between conviction and terror. Outside, the sun was just starting to rise over Philadelphia, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Then she heard it, a rumble in the distance that grew louder with every second, like thunder that refused to stop, like an earthquake with an engine. The first motorcycle turned onto their street at exactly 7 a.m. Then another, then 5 more, then 20. The rumble became a roar that shook the windows and set off car alarms. Amara pressed her face against the glass, eyes wide. Mama, look! Jasmine looked and couldn't breathe. The entire street was filling with motorcycles. Dozens of them. No, hundreds. Bikers in leather jackets bearing different club patches. Iron Horses, Steel Phoenix, Road Warriors, Crimson Riders. Clubs that normally were rivals, all united for one purpose. They parked in perfect formation, engines cutting off in waves until an unnatural silence fell. Then the jacket, child-sized, real leather. On the back, embroidered in beautiful script, Little Sister. The Iron Horse's emblem sat proudly on the front. Put this on, little one, Tank said to Amara. You're family now, and we protect family. Amara slipped into the jacket. It fit perfectly. She looked at herself in the hallway mirror and stood a little taller. Neighbors had started emerging from their apartments. Mrs. Chen, in her wheelchair, had tears in her eyes. The Martinez family stood in their doorway, both parents grinning. Jerome tipped his head to them. Ready? Tank asked Amara. She nodded, took her mother's hand. Together they walked down the stairs and out onto the street. The sight that greeted them made Jasmine's knees weak. 312 bikers stood in organized rows, men and women, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, some with gray beards, others barely old enough to drink, all wearing their colors, all here for one tiny girl. Tank raised his hand and the biker snapped to attention. Brothers and sisters, his voice carried across the assembled crowd. This is Amara Jefferson. She's 7 years old. She asked for our help because the systems that should protect her have failed. Today, we show her and everyone else that when you stand up against hate, you don't stand alone. The bikers erupted in agreement. Fists raised, voices united. We're not riding to the school. We're walking, side by side, like a family taking their daughter to class. Because that's what we are now, family. He knelt down to Amara's level. You ready, little sister? Yes, sir. Then let's go change some minds. The procession began. Tank on Amara's right, Jasmine on her left. Behind them, 312 bikers fell into step. Their boots hit the pavement in rhythm, creating a sound like an army on the march. Cars pulled over to watch. People came out of their houses with phones recording. The video was already being uploaded to social media before they'd made it 2 blocks. Amara walked with her head high, her little sister jacket shining in the morning sun. For the first time in 3 weeks, she felt safe. They passed the oak tree where Cody had pushed her down. A biker named Chains picked a flower growing nearby and handed it to Amara. That's the last time anyone hurts you in this spot, he said. They turned onto Riverside Elementary Street. In the distance, they could see the school. Cars were backed up. Parents had stopped to stare. Some were already calling the principal. Mama, Amara said quietly, what if they don't let me in? Then we make them explain why 300 people showing up to protect you is a problem, Jasmine replied. As they got closer, Amara could see the school parking lot. And there, standing next to an expensive Mercedes, were Dale and Cody Brennan. Dale's face was red bright. Cody looked terrified. Principal Harrison emerged from the school building, flanked by security guards and teachers. Every student's face was pressed against classroom windows. The procession stopped at the school entrance. Perfect silence. 300 bikers and one little girl facing down an institution that had failed her. Tank stepped forward, but before he could speak, something unexpected happened. A news van pulled up. Then another. Then 3 more. Cameras were already rolling. Dale Brennan went pale. He tried to retreat to his car, but reporters swarmed him. Mr. Brennan, is it true your son has been bullying this child? Mr. Brennan, why did you threaten this family? Mr. Brennan, do you care to comment on why 300 bikers took to get the school to protect one of its students? Fight. Tank turned to the cameras and spoke clearly. My name is Marcus Rodriguez. These are members of various motorcycle clubs who came together for one reason: to make sure Amara Jefferson can attend school without fear. We shouldn't have to be here. The school should have protected her. They didn't. So we will. A reporter thrust a microphone toward Amara. Sweetheart, why did you ask bikers for help instead of telling your parents or teachers? Amara looked directly at the camera. 7 years old, wearing a leather jacket that hung to her knees, surrounded by an army of protectors. I did tell my teachers. They didn't believe me. I told my principal. He said kids should work it out. My mama tried to help but got threatened. So I found people who would listen. And they did. The reporter turned to Principal Harrison. Sir, do you have a response? But before he could answer, Cody Brennan did something nobody expected. He stepped forward, tears streaming down his face, and said 5 words that changed everything. I'm sorry. I was wrong. If this is your first time on Top Core, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what happens when a child's apology meets 300 bikers' protection will restore your faith in humanity and prove that courage comes in the smallest packages. Cody Brennan stood in the middle of 300 bikers, his father's expensive Mercedes behind him, tears running down his 9-year-old face. I'm sorry, he said again, louder this time. I was wrong. Dale Brennan grabbed his son's shoulder. Cody, get in the car, now. But Cody shook his head. No, Dad, I have to say this.
The news cameras zoomed in. Every phone in the crowd was recording. This was the moment that would define everything that came after. I hurt Amara, Cody said, his voice breaking. I pushed her. I let Tyler and Brandon hurt her. I told Emma to trip her. I said mean things, really mean things that my dad says at dinner when he thinks I'm not listening. Dale's face went from red to purple. Son, stop talking right now. Why? Because you don't want people to know you told me she doesn't belong here? That people like her ruin neighborhoods? That's what you said, Dad. Those exact words. The reporters went into a feeding frenzy. Microphones thrust toward Dale, who was backing toward his car. Mr. Brennan, did you teach your son to bully minority students? Mr. Brennan, are you aware this constitutes a civil rights violation? Mr. Brennan, will you be pressing charges against the bikers or apologizing to the Jefferson family? Dale Brennan did what powerful men do when cornered. He ran. Literally. Got in his Mercedes and peeled out of the parking lot, leaving his son standing alone. Cody looked lost. A 9-year-old who'd just been abandoned by his father on camera for telling the truth. Tank walked over to him. Cody flinched, expecting anger. Instead, Tank knelt down, bringing himself to the boy's level, just like he'd done with Amara. That took guts, kid, Tank said quietly. Admitting you're wrong is harder than being right. Are you going to hurt me? Cody whispered. No, we don't hurt kids. That's kind of our whole thing. Tank stood and addressed the crowd. Cody Brennan just showed more courage than most adults. He owned his mistakes. That's the first step to being better. He looked at Principal Harrison, who was trying to blend into the brick wall. You, on the other hand, have some explaining to do. A reporter called out, Principal Harrison, how do you respond to these allegations of ignored bullying? We have policies in place, proper channels. We can't. Carrying across the parking lot. My daughter was assaulted repeatedly, had evidence, witnesses, injuries, and you called it a dispute? What does it take to be bullying in your school? Broken bones? Hospital visits? Death? The word hung in the air. Death. Because that's where this could have gone. Where it had gone in other schools when adults looked away. Tank pulled out his phone and held it up. Social media right now. 6 different videos of this morning. Combined views already over 200,000 and climbing. Hashtag Amara's Army is trending. People want to know why a 7-year-old needed 300 strangers to feel safe at school. Principal Harrison looks sick. Here's what's going to happen, Tank continued, his voice calm but carrying absolute authority. The Iron Horses and our allied clubs are adopting Riverside Elementary. Starting tomorrow, we provide crossing guards every morning and afternoon. We volunteer for reading programs. We organize fundraisers. We become so involved in this school that if any child, doesn't matter their color, feels unsafe, they have someone to tell who will actually listen. Now wait just a minute, Principal Harrison started. Are you refusing community volunteers? Tank asked. That's going to look real interesting on the news. School rejects help from motorcycle clubs offering free security and educational support. Wonder how that plays with parents. A mother from the crowd shouted, I want them here. My kid told me about the bullying. I thought he was exaggerating. Another parent, my daughter said Riverside has a racism problem. I didn't believe her. I believe her now. More voices joined. The dam had broken. Parents who'd been afraid to speak up, who'd dismissed their children's concerns, who trusted the school to handle it, they were all talking now. Principal Harrison raised his hands. Everyone, please come down. We can discuss this in an orderly... No, said a woman in a business suit, stepping forward. I'm Rachel Morrison, school board member. I wasn't aware of the situation until 20 minutes ago when my phone exploded with notifications. Mr. Rodriguez, on behalf of the board, I accept your offer. We welcome your organization's involvement. Principal Harrison's jaw dropped. Rachel, you can't just... I can and I am. This is a PR disaster and a legal nightmare. We either get ahead of it or we get buried by it. She turned to the cameras. Riverside Elementary is committed
to providing a safe environment for all students. We will be conducting a full investigation into these allegations and implementing immediate reforms. Tank nodded to Diesel, who pulled out a folder. We took the liberty of drafting a proposal. Volunteer schedules, background checks on all our members, liability waivers. We're not asking for money or special treatment, just a chance to make sure what happened to Amara doesn't happen to anyone else. Rachel took the folder, impressed despite herself. These weren't just bikers showing up to make noise. They'd come prepared like a professional organization. We'll review this and have a response by tomorrow, Rachel said. Today, Tank countered. The longer this goes, the more it looks like stalling. Rachel checked her watch, looked at the camera still rolling, calculated the cost of delay versus the cost of action. Fine, by 5 p.m. today, you'll have an answer. Tank extended his hand. Rachel shook it. The image of a school board member shaking hands with the president of a motorcycle club agreeing to protect children together went viral within minutes. Amara tugged on Tank's jacket. Can I go to class now? Tank looked at Jasmine, who nodded.
Walked into Riverside Elementary with her head high. Students in the hallway parted like the Red Sea. Teachers stared, but nobody said a word. Amara got to her classroom. Mrs. Williams, her teacher, had tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry," Mrs. Williams whispered. "I should have seen it, should have stopped it." "You see it now," Amara said simply. "That's what matters." Outside, the bikers didn't move until the bell rang and Amara was confirmed in her seat. Then, and only then, did they begin to disperse. But not before Tank make one final announcement. "We'll be back at 3 p.m. for dismissal, and tomorrow morning, and the day after. Every day until this school proves it can protect its students without us. Anyone has a problem with that, you know where to find us." As the bikers walked away, their boots creating that rhythmic thunder, phones across America were buzzing. The video had gone viral, truly viral. 2 million views in an hour, 5 million by lunch. By the end of the school date, #AmarasArmy had been tweeted over 1 million times. News outlets picked it up, morning shows, evening broadcasts, social media influencers. Everyone had an opinion about the 7-year-old who'd walked into a biker bar and came out with an army. But while the world celebrated Amara's courage and the bikers' heroism, something was happening that nobody was talking about yet. Dale Brennan was making phone calls, expensive phone calls, to lawyers, to friends in the police department, to the mayor. And in a quiet office across town, someone was watching all this unfold with great interest. Someone who'd been waiting for an opportunity like this. Someone who saw in Amara's story a chance to expose something much bigger than one school's bullying problem. Because Riverside Elementary's issues weren't isolated. They were systemic, deliberate, part of a pattern stretching back years. And Amara Jefferson, 7 years old in a leather jacket, had just kicked over the first domino. The video hit 10 million views by midnight. Amara couldn't sleep. Neither could Jasmine. They sat on their couch watching the news coverage, phones buzzing nonstop with messages from relatives, old friends, strangers offering support. "Mom, what's trending mean?" Amara asked. "It means everybody's talking about you, baby." "Is that good?" Jasmine didn't know how to answer. Fame was complicated, especially when you were 7 years old and black, and your face was now known to millions of people who had opinions about your life. A knock at the door at 11 p.m. made Jasmine grab the baseball bat she now kept by the entrance. She looked through the peephole and saw Tank, along with 2 other bikers. "Miss Jefferson, it's Marcus. We need to talk." She opened the door, bat still in hand. "Little late for a visit." "I know. I'm sorry. But you're about to get flooded with attention you're not prepared for. Media requests, lawyers, book deals, people wanting to use Amara's story for their own purposes. You need protection." "From what?" Tank held up his phone, showing a news article. Dale Brennan hires top attorney, plans defamation lawsuit against motorcycle clubs and Jefferson family. Jasmine's blood ran cold. "He's suing us?" "He's threatening to, claiming Cody was coerced into that apology, that we orchestrated the whole thing for publicity, that you're exploiting Amara for money." "That's insane." That's what rich people do when they're losing. They lawyer up and try to bankrupt you before trial even starts. Tack sat at her kitchen table uninvited. But here's the thing. We've dealt with guys like Brennan before, and we have resources you don't. Like what? Like Jerome over here. Used to be a paralegal before his record. Unhireable. Like, Chains knows 7 actual lawyers who ride with us on weekends. Like, we've got a media team. Yeah, we have a media team who can help you navigate the press. Jasmine sat down slowly. Why are you doing all this? Because Amara trusted us. And when someone trusts you with something that important, you don't have step. The next morning brought chaos. News vans camped outside their apartment, reporters shouting questions. Jasmine couldn't get to work without being mobbed. But Tank's team was ready. 2 bikers served as escorts. Jerome handled media requests, scheduling proper interviews, and turning down the vultures. Chains connected Jasmine with a civil rights attorney who took the case pro bono after watching the video. At Riverside Elementary, the transformation was already beginning. The school board had emergency meetings. Principal Harrison was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Rachel Morrison personally oversaw the implementation of new anti-bullying protocols. And true to their word, the Iron Horses showed up every single morning. 5 bikers served as crossing guards, helping every child cross safely regardless of color. They wore official vests the school provided, making them legitimate volunteers. The first week, parents were nervous. By the second week, they were grateful. By the third week, kids were running up to give the bikers high fives. Diesel started a reading program where bikers read to kindergartners. Tough men with tattoos and scars, sitting in tiny chairs, reading The Very Hungry Caterpillar to wide-eyed 5-year-olds. The videos of that went viral too. Chains organized the fundraiser motorcycle ride that brought in $40,000 for new playground equipment and computers. The old, broken playground where Amara had been bullied was torn down and replaced with something beautiful and safe. But the biggest change was in the students themselves. They'd watched the 7-year-old stand up to her bullies. They'd seen adults actually do something to protect the child. They'd learned that speaking up could bring change. Reports of bullying increased dramatically, not because bullying got worse, but because kids finally felt safe reporting it. And every single report was taken seriously. No more boys will be boys, no more dismissing concerns. The new acting principal, Dr. Yolanda Martinez, had a zero-tolerance policy and the backbone to enforce it. Tyler, the kid who'd helped Cody hurt Amara, came to school one day and asked to talk to Tank. They sat on a bench outside. This angry 9-year-old and the massive biker president. My parents are getting divorced, and I was mad. I took it out on Amara because she was there and I could. That's honest, Tank said. I'm still mad, but I don't want to be mean anymore. It didn't make me feel better, it made me feel worse. You know what takes real strength? Feeling your feelings without making them someone else's problem. Tyler thought about that. Can you teach me how? Tank connected Tyler with a counselor who volunteered with the club, a therapist who rode a Harley and understood that anger was just pain wearing armor. Brandon, the follower, started sitting with Amara at lunch. Not to apologize, he'd already done that, but because he'd realized she was actually pretty cool. They bonded over their shared love of dinosaurs and space. Even Emma, who'd been so relieved not to be the target anymore, learned something. When a new student started getting picked on for being overweight, Emma didn't join in. She didn't stay silent. She told the kids to leave him alone and went on with her and Amara's legendary game of tag team dinosaurs. Silent. She told a teacher. Then she sat with the new girl at recess. The cycle was breaking. Not perfectly. Not completely. But breaking. Dale Brennan's lawsuit fell apart when his own lawyer watched the video evidence and told him he had no case. Cody's apology had been voluntary. The bikers had committed no crimes. And suing for defamation when everything said about you was true is a good way to waste money.
Dale quietly withdrew Cody from Riverside, claiming family relocation. Everyone knew the truth. He couldn't face the community that had rejected his racism. Cody, surprisingly, wrote Amara a letter before he left. "I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. I don't know if I forgive me, but I'm going to try to be better. My mom left my dad. She said she should have left a long time ago. We're moving to my grandma's house in another state, starting over. I'm scared, but also kind of relieved. I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I believed my dad instead of thinking for myself. You were braver than I ever was. Thank you for showing me what courage looks like. Cody." Amara showed the letter to Tank. "Should I write back? Do you want to?" "I think so. He was mean, but he was also being hurt. His dad hurt him first, then he hurt me. If I can break that cycle by forgiving him, maybe he won't hurt the next kid." Tank's eyes got misty. "You're wise beyond your years, little sister." Amara wrote back. 3 sentences. "I forgive you. Thank you for being brave enough to apologize. I hope you find happiness." Jasmine got promoted at the hospital. Not because of the publicity, but because in the chaos of everything, someone finally noticed she'd been working there for 6 years and was the hardest worker on the night shift. She started nursing school part-time, scholarship funded by an anonymous donor who everyone suspected was Tank. The Iron Horses Bar and Grill put up a photo wall. Pictures of the 300 bikers walking Amara to school. Pictures of kids reading with their new biker mentors. Pictures of the new playground. Pictures of Amara in her little sister jacket smiling. The plaque underneath read, "The day we learned that courage comes in all sizes, and family comes in all forms." 6 months after that October morning, a ceremony was held at Riverside. The Amara Protocol was being officially adopted. Schools across the district would now have community protection programs. When a child reported bullying and felt unheard, approved community organizations would step in. Amara stood at a podium that had been adjusted to her height, speaking to an auditorium full of people: students, teachers, parents, bikers, media, school board members. She was 8 now, still small, still brave. "I want to tell you something I haven't told anyone," she began. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. "Asking for someone to walk me to school. I was asking for someone to help me feel like I deserved to exist, like I had a right to be in this world without having to hide or be afraid or apologize for the color of my skin." The auditorium was dead silent. "You saved me," Amara said, looking at the bikers gathered in the back. "But I need everyone to understand something. I wasn't just a bullied kid. I was a black kid in a system that didn't think I mattered. And I'm not alone. There are Amaras in every school. Kids who are scared, who don't feel safe, who clean up broken windows and hide threatening notes because they don't want to be more trouble." She looked directly at the cameras. "You think this story is about bikers being heroes, but the real story is about why a 7-year-old had to find strangers to protect her when all the adults whose job it was to protect her failed. The real story is about why being black in a white school felt dangerous, why my mom was too scared of losing everything to fight for me, why Principal Harrison looked the other way, why Dale Brennan thought he could threaten us without consequences." Rachel Morrison was crying. So were half the parents in the room. "The Iron Horses didn't save me from bullies," Amara continued. "They saved me from a system that thinks some kids matter more than others. And until we fix that system, there will always be another Amara. Another kid holding a note written in crayon, desperate enough to walk into the place that scares them because everywhere else has already failed. She folded up the threatening note and put it back in her pocket. This story isn't over. It's just beginning. Because now you all know. You can't unknow it. You can't look away. So the question is, what are you going to do about it? Amara stepped down from the podium. The auditorium erupted in standing applause. But she wasn't done shocking people. She walked straight to Tank and whispered something in his ear. His eyes went wide. He nodded slowly. Then Amara Jefferson, 8 years old, walked out of that auditorium wearing her little sister jacket, leaving 300 bikers and 1,000 people wondering what secret she just shared with the man who'd become her protector. Hit that like button and share this story, because what Amara whispered to Tank will change everything you think you know about courage and what happens when one child's truth becomes too big to hide. Tank stood in the empty auditorium long after everyone had left. The words Amara had whispered still echoed in his head, sending chills down his spine. There are 12 other kids. I know their names. They're scared like I was. Will you help them too? For 6 months, Tank and the Iron Horses had focused everything on Amara and Riverside Elementary. They'd assumed her case was isolated, maybe 1 or 2 other incidents. But 12? 12 other kids suffering in silence? He pulled out his phone and called an emergency club meeting. 2 hours later, 40 bikers sat in the Iron Horses clubhouse listening to Tank explain what Amara had told them. But he'd asked her to come too, to tell them herself. Amara stood in front of these tough men, no longer the terrified 7-year-old who'd first walked through their door. She brought a notebook. Inside were names, grades, descriptions of what was happening to each child. This is Marcus Chen. He's in 3rd grade. Kids pull his eyes back and make fun of his accent even though he was born here. His mom works at the nail salon. She doesn't speak English well, so Marcus doesn't tell her what's happening because he knows she can't fight it. She flipped the page. This is Gabriela Rodriguez.
5th grade. Kids call her illegal even though her family's been here for 3 generations. They throw her lunch away and say, go back to Mexico. She stopped eating at school. Lost 15 pounds. Teachers think she's just a picky eater. Page after page. 12 children, 12 stories of systematic cruelty that adults were missing or ignoring. How do you know all this? Beazle asked gently. Because when you're the kid getting picked on, you notice the other kids getting picked on. We find each other. We eat lunch together in the corner. We watch out for each other when we can. But we're just kids. We can't stop it by ourselves. Jerome was taking notes. Have any of them reported? All of them. Multiple times. Same response I got. Kids will be kids. Work it out. Maybe you're being too sensitive. Marcus got told he should try harder to fit in. Gabriella's teacher suggested she'd face less teasing if she went by Gabby instead of her real name. The bikers exchanged dark looks. This wasn't bullying. This was ethnic cleansing through psychological warfare, making minority kids so miserable they'd voluntarily leave, keeping the school's demographics exactly how certain parents wanted them. There's more, Amara said quietly. I think someone's organizing it. What do you mean? Tank leaned forward. The kids doing the bullying, they're always the same families. Their parents all know each other. They go to the same church, their dads play golf together, and they all started treating us bad around the same time, like someone gave them permission. Tank's instincts fired up. He'd spent 3 years in the Marines before an injury sent him home. He knew what coordinated action looked like. You think parents are coordinating their kids to push minority students out? I think some parents don't want their kids going to school with us. And I think they found a way to make us leave without being obvious about it. Chain spoke up. That's a conspiracy theory. You got proof? Amara pulled out her phone. On it was a screenshot of a private Facebook group called Riverside Excellence Initiative. The description read,
Concerned parents working to maintain Riverside Elementary's traditional values and academic standards. How'd you get access to this? Tank asked. Brandon's mom left her Facebook open on their computer when I was at his house for a project. I took pictures. She scrolled through the screenshots, post after post about declining standards and disruptive students and protecting our investment in property values. Never explicitly mentioning race, but the coded language was clear to anyone who knew how to read it. One post from a parent read, "Update. The Jefferson situation resolved itself. The child has protective services now, but has clearly learned this isn't the right environment for her family. 3 families are considering relocation. Our strategy is working." The date on the post was 2 weeks before Amara walked into the bar. "They were counting on me leaving," Amara said. "They wanted my mom to get so scared she'd pull me out. When I got protection instead, their plan failed, but they're still doing it to the other kids." Tank felt rage building in his chest, but he forced it down. Rage didn't solve problems. Strategy did. "We need evidence. Real evidence. Screenshots help, but we need to prove coordination. Need to show this is organized discrimination, not just individual bullying." "I might be able to help with that," said a voice from the doorway. Everyone turned. A woman in her 40s stood there, dressed in jeans and a leather jacket. She had a press badge around her neck. "My name is Michelle Foster. I'm an investigative journalist with the Philadelphia Inquirer. I've been following Amara's story since it broke, and I think can prove your theory is correct." Tank stood up, protective. "How'd you find this location?" "I'm good at my job. And before you throw me out, you should know I've been investigating Riverside Elementary for 2 years, long before Amara's story went viral." She walked further into the room, pulled out a folder thick with documents. "Riverside Elementary has had 17 minority families leave in the past 3 years, all citing better opportunities elsewhere. But when I tracked them down and interviewed them, every single one told the same story: systematic bullying, ignored complaints, subtle and not so subtle pressure to leave. One family received a dead rat in their mailbox with a note saying, 'Your kind isn't wanted here.'" Jasmine gasped. She'd gotten that same threat in her mailbox a week after Amara started school. She'd thrown it away, too scared to report it. "The school board knows," Michelle continued, "or some members do. They've buried 3 separate investigations. Rachel Morrison is clean. She genuinely didn't know until your story broke. But there are 2 other board members who are part of that Facebook group. They've been actively covering this up." "Why?" Diesel asked. "What do they gain?" "Property values. Riverside has the highest test scores in the district. That makes homes expensive. But test scores stay high partly because they quietly push out students who might struggle, which disproportionately means poor kids and minority kids. It's not legal, it's not ethical, but it's profitable for people who own property in the district." Tank looked at the bikers around him. "We've stumbled into something bigger than we thought." "No," Michelle corrected. "Amara stumbled into it. You just gave her a platform big enough that people had to pay attention. But here's the thing. If we expose this right, we don't just save 12 kids. We blow open a system that's been operating in districts across the country. Riverside isn't unique. It's just the one that got caught." "What do you need from us?" Tank asked. "Your cooperation. Your protection for the families who are willing to testify. And Amara's permission to tell her full story, including what she just revealed in the auditorium." Everyone looked at Amara. 8 years old, holding a notebook full of other children's pain, being asked if she was ready to become the face of a national investigation into educational racism. "Will it help the other kids?" Amara asked. "Yes, if we do this right, it could help thousands of kids." "Then let's do it." Michelle smiled. "You're going to need protection. Once this story breaks, there will be pushback. Legal threats. Actual threats. People don't like having their profitable schemes exposed." "We've got protection covered," Tank said, gesturing to his brothers. But Amara shook her head. Not just for me, for all 12 kids and their families. Can you protect all of them? Tank looked around the room. 40 bikers. 12 families, plus Samara and Jasmine. That was a lot of ground to cover. His phone buzzed. He looked at it and started laughing. "What's funny?" Chains asked. "Just got a text from the Steel Phoenix's president. Says he heard we might need backup. They're offering 50 members. The Road Warriors just offered 40. The Crimson Riders, 60. Diesel grinned. Word travels fast. "It's not just word of mouth," Tank said, showing his phone. "Someone leaked what Amara said in that auditorium about the 12 kids. It's already on social media. Bikers across 3 states are asking how they can help." Michelle checked her own phone. Hashtag 12 more is trending. People want to know who the other children are, when you're going to protect them. Amara looked up at Tank with those big, trusting eyes. "So we can help them? All of them?" "Yeah, little sister. We can help them." But before anyone,
Just as they started to celebrate, Jerome's phone rang. He answered, listened, and his face went pale. That was my contact at the courthouse. Dale Brennan just filed a lawsuit, not against us, against Amara, directly. He's suing her for defamation and emotional distress, claiming her public statements have destroyed his son's reputation and mental health. Silence fell across the room. He's suing an 8-year-old child? Jasmine's voice shook with rage. "It's a strategy," Michelle said quietly, trying to scare her into silence before the bigger story breaks. If Amara recants, says she exaggerated, the whole thing falls apart. Tank knelt in front of Amara. "You don't have to do this. You can walk away right now. Let someone else fight this fight. You've already done more than anyone should have to at your age." Amara looked at her notebook. 12 names. 12 kids waiting to see if someone would finally protect them the way the Iron Horses had protected her. "I'm not walking away," she said. "But I need to tell you something else. Something I haven't told anyone. Not even my mom." Jasmine grabbed her daughter's hand. "Baby, what haven't you told me?" Amara's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed steady. "Kyle Brennan, Cody's older brother who threw the rock through our window, he didn't stop. He's been following me, taking pictures. He posted them in that Facebook group with my address and my mom's work schedule." Jasmine went white. "When? How long?" "Since December. 3 months now. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd pull me out of school and then Cody's family would win. But he's getting worse. Last week he followed me to the library and whispered that accidents happen to little girls who don't know when to shut up." Tank was already on his phone. "I'm calling the police. That's stalking. That's a direct threat." "Wait," Michelle said quietly. "I want to be clear. I'm a journalist, not an activist. But if you report this to police right now, before my story runs, there's a chance it gets buried. Some officers are part of that Facebook group. I have proof." "Cops are in on this?" Diesel stood up, fists clenched. "2 officers. Both have kids at Riverside. Both are admins of the Riverside Excellence Initiative group. They've been running interference, making sure complaints about harassment against minority families don't get properly investigated." Tank's jaw tightened. "So we have corrupt cops, corrupt board members, organized parents coordinating bullying, and a 17-year-old stalking an 8-year-old? What's to play?" Michelle laid it out. "We go public tomorrow. Front page of the Inquirer, online edition live at 6 a.m. Every detail. The Facebook group, the board members involved, the police connection, the 12 families, Kyle Brennan stalking, everything. Make it too big to bury." "That puts a target on Amara," Jasmine said. "The target's already there," Michelle replied. "This just makes sure everyone knows it. Makes it harder to hurt her quietly." "I can work with that," Tank said, "but we do it smart. Tonight, we move all 12 families to safe locations. Hotels, paid for by club funds. Tomorrow morning, when the story drops, we have 200 bikers split among all the locations. They can't threaten 12 different places at once." "What about school?" Amara asked. "No school tomorrow," Jasmine said firmly. "Not until we know you're safe." But Amara shook her head. "If I don't go to school, they win. They scare me into hiding. That's what they want." The Tank knelt down.
Little sister, there's brave and there's reckless. You walked me to school with 300 bikers before. Do it again, but this time walk all 12 of us, together. Massive attention, but it would also send a message that couldn't be ignored. Call it the March of the 12, Michelle said, already typing on her laptop. I can have photographers there, live coverage, make it impossible to spin. Jerome was doing math. 12 kids, 12 families. We'd need 400 bikers minimum, Tank finished, maybe more for safety. His phone was already ringing. Other club presidents who'd seen the trending hashtags. Within 2 hours, they had commitments for 560 bikers, clubs from 4 states, all coming to protect 12 children. The logistics were complex. Each family needed escorts from home to the meeting point, security at each location overnight, coordination for the morning march, communication systems in case of trouble. But the Iron Horses had been organizing charity rides for decades. They knew how to move large groups safely. By midnight, the plan was set. 15th, 6 a.m. Michelle Foster's story went live. Inside the secret group using children as tools for ethnic cleansing in Philadelphia schools. The headline was fire. The evidence was damning. Screenshots of the Facebook group, testimonies from all 17 families who'd left, financial records showing the 2 corrupt board members owned rental properties that had increased in value as the neighborhood gentrified. By 6:30 a.m., the story had been shared 50,000 times. At 7 a.m., 562 bikers gathered at the parking lot of a closed shopping center. 12 families stood in the middle, holding hands, terrified but determined. Amara wore her little sister jacket. So did 11 other children. Jackets made overnight by a seamstress who rode with the Steel Phoenixes. Marcus Chen, Gabriela Rodriguez, 10 others whose names were about to become known to the world. Tank addressed the crowd. Today, we don't just walk one child to school. We walk 12. We make it clear that targeting children for their race, their language, their culture is not acceptable. Not in our city, not in any city, not ever. The march began. 12 children, 12 families, 562 bikers, walking through Philadelphia streets as the sun rose. The sound of boots on pavement like thunder. Phones recording from every angle. News helicopters overhead. They passed the spot where Kyle Brennan lived. Police cars were already there, having arrested him an hour earlier based on Michelle's story and evidence Amara had collected. He was being charged with stalking and criminal threats. They passed Dale Brannon's car dealerships. Protesters were already gathering with signs. Hate isn't a family value. Children over property values. Riverside is for everyone. They reached Riverside Elementary at 8 a.m. sharp. The parking lot was packed. Parents had brought their children early to show support. Some held signs. Others wore shirts that said, "I stand with the 12." Dr. Martinez, the acting principal, stood at the entrance with tears streaming down her face. Next to her was Rachel Morrison and 3 new school board members who'd been emergency appointed the night before after the corrupt members resigned. On behalf of Riverside Elementary, Dr. Martinez said into a microphone so everyone could hear, I apologize. To Amara, to these 12 families, to every family we failed. This ends today. Rachel Morrison stepped forward. The board has voted unanimously to implement the Amara Protocol district-wide. Every school will have community protection programs. Every bullying complaint will be investigated by independent parties. Zero tolerance policy for coordinated harassment. The bikers and families were invited inside. The school had set up an assembly. Students filled the auditorium. Teachers stood along the walls. Every eye was on the 12 children as they walked down the center aisle. Amara stood at the podium again. But this time, she wasn't alone. Marcus stood next to her, then Gabriela, then all 12, holding hands. We're not victims, Amara said. We're survivors, and we're not going anywhere. The auditorium erupted in applause. Students stood, teachers cried. Parents who'd been part of the problem looked at the floor, ashamed. One parent stood up. My son was one of the bullies. I taught him to see you as different, as less than. I was wrong. I am so deeply sorry. Another parent stood.
Then another. Confessions and apologies flowing. Not everyone. Some people held on to their hate, but enough admitted their role that the culture of the school shifted in real time. Tank watched from the back, surrounded by his brothers. They'd done what they set out to do. Protected children, changed the system, proved that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when you need them. 5 years later, Amara Jefferson stood at the entrance to Riverside Elementary, now 13 years old, preparing for her speech at the 5th Annual Courage March. What had started as one walk had become a tradition. Every October 15th, bikers from across the country descended on Philadelphia to walk with students who needed protection. The Amara Protocol had been adopted in 43 states. Schools nationwide had community protection programs. Bullying reports were at all-time highs, not because bullying increased, but because children finally felt safe reporting it. The 12 kids who'd stood with her that day were thriving. Marcus was in high school honors programs. Gabriella was student council president. All 12 had stayed at Riverside, supported by a school that had transformed completely. Dale Brennan's businesses had collapsed. He'd filed bankruptcy and moved out of state. Cody was doing well, though. His mother had gotten full custody, gotten him therapy, and he'd written a book about unlearning his father's hatred. All proceeds went to anti-bullying programs. Kyle Brennan had served 18 months for stalking and was now required to complete 2,000 hours of community service working with at-risk youth. Ironically, he'd become one of the program's most effective advocates, using his story as a cautionary tale. Tank stood next to Amara, gray now in his beard, but still strong. The Iron Horses had grown to include 93 chapters nationwide, all dedicated to community protection. "You ready, little sister?" he asked. "I've been ready for 5 years, Amara smiled. She walked to the podium, looking out at a crowd of 5,000, students, parents, teachers, bikers, activists, journalists. Michelle Foster was there, having won a Pulitzer for her reporting. Jasmine sat in the front row, now a registered nurse, proud beyond words. 5 years ago, I was 7 years old and terrified. I walked into a biker bar because I had nowhere else to go. Today, I want to introduce you to someone who did the same thing last week. Enough to see over it. My name is Sofia Martinez. I'm 6 years old, and I'm not scared anymore." The crowd erupted. Amara knelt down and whispered to Sofia the same words Tank had whispered to her 5 years ago. "You're family now, and we protect family." As the 5th Annual Courage March began, now with over 1,000 bikers walking hundreds of children to schools across the city, Amara looked back at Tank and smiled. "We did it," she said. "We actually changed things." "No," Tank corrected. "You changed things. We just followed your lead." And as the sun rose over Philadelphia, over a city that had learned that courage comes in all sizes and family comes in all forms, one thing was absolutely clear. When a child is brave enough to ask for help, the answer will always be yes. This is Topcore, where every story proves that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they choose courage over fear. If this story moved you, share it. Because somewhere right now, there's a child who needs to know that help is available, that protection is possible, that they don't have to face their battles alone. Subscribe if you believe that together we can create a world where every child feels safe enough to just be a child. The march continues. Jefferson turned 16 on a Tuesday in March. She should have been thinking about driver's licenses and prom dresses. Instead, she was sitting in a congressional hearing room in Washington, D.C., about to testify before the Senate Committee on Education. The Amara Protocol has spread to 47 states now. Over 2,000 schools had community protection programs. Bullying reports were being taken seriously. Children were safer. But something new was emerging, something darker. Miss Jefferson, Senator Patricia Caldwell began, her voice echoing through the chamber. "Thank you for being here. Can you explain to the committee what you've discovered?" Amara adjusted the microphone. She'd done this dozens of times now. Speeches, interviews, panel discussions. But this felt different, heavier. 6 months ago, I started receiving messages from students across the country. Kids who'd heard my story and wanted help. Most were legitimate, but some were different,
She pulled up a screen showing dozens of threatening messages, death threats, rape threats, promises of violence so graphic the senator asked her to stop reading them aloud. These aren't from kids, they're from adults. Organized adults who are angry that the Amara Protocol is working. They call themselves the Heritage Defense League. They've been targeting students in schools with protection programs, trying to prove the programs don't work. Senator Caldwell leaned forward. You're saying there's an organized effort to attack children to discredit anti-bullying programs? Yes, ma'am. And it's bigger than we thought. Financial records showing funding from 3 different organizations that claim to be about parental rights, but are really about maintaining racial segregation in schools. She looked directly at the skeptical senator. And I have testimony from 4 members who left the group and are willing to talk. One of them is your former campaign manager, Senator Richards. Would you like me to submit that evidence publicly, or would you prefer to review it privately first? The room went silent. Senator Richards went pale. Tank allowed himself a small smile. His little sister had grown claws. How did you obtain this information? Senator Caldwell asked. I'm 16 years old. Adults think I'm harmless. They talk around me, post things where they think kids won't see them. They underestimate us. Amara paused. Also, I have really good hackers helping me. All legal information gathering, verified by our attorney. She nodded toward Jerome, who was now a licensed paralegal and had helped coordinate the investigation with Michelle Foster and a team of tech-savvy bikers. What do you want from this committee? Senator Caldwell asked. Federal protection for students who report organized harassment, federal prosecution for adults who coordinate attacks on children, and federal funding for community protection programs so they're not dependent on volunteers and donations. That's a significant ask. Children being safe at school shouldn't be an ask. It should be a guarantee. The hearing lasted 4 hours. Testimony from Michelle Foster about her investigation, from Tank about the Iron Horse's involvement, from 3 of the Heritage Defense League defectors who confirmed everything Amara had presented. By the time it ended, 3 senators were calling for immediate Justice Department investigation. 2 were trying to downplay it, and Senator Richards had quietly left the building. Outside the Capitol, news crews swarmed. Amara was used to this now. She'd given the statement when Tank's phone rang. His face went dark as he listened. We need to go, he said urgently to Jasmine. Now. What's wrong? Jasmine asked. Riverside Elementary. There's been an incident. They made it back to Philadelphia in 3 hours, Tank driving like the devil was chasing them. When they arrived at the school, police cars filled the parking lot, ambulances, news vans. Dr. Martinez met them at the entrance, shaking. Someone planted devices in 12. Jasmine pulled back, confused. They're scared. They're making mistakes. Threatening a minor who just testified before Congress? The FBI will have to act now. They gave us everything we needed to take them down completely. Tank studied her. When did you get so tactical? I learned from the best, she looked at him. You taught me that scared enemies make sloppy enemies. They just prove they're terrified of what we're building. You're also a child who just got death threats in your bedroom, Jasmine said. We should run, hide, get you somewhere safe. Mama, nowhere is safe if we run. They'll just target someone else. Another kid who speaks up, another family that fights back. We end this now, or it never ends. Michelle was typing furiously on her laptop. I can have a story published in an hour. These threats, the devices at school, the photos, all of it public. Make it impossible for them to act without every eye in the country watching. Do it, Amara said. Baby, Jasmine started. Mom, I'm not 7 anymore. I'm not the scared little girl who walked into a biker bar. I'm 16. I've spent 9 years fighting this fight. Let me finish it. Tank's phone buzzed. He looked at it and showed Amara. Messages from club presidents across the country. They'd heard about the threats. They were coming. How many? Amara asked. Last count, 2,000 bikers. They'll be here by morning. Dr. Martinez cleared her throat. The school board already called emergency meeting. They want to close the school temporarily, for safety. No, Amara said firmly. That's what they want. Close the school, disrupt the protection programs, prove they don't work. We don't give them that. Amara, there were bomb threats. Fake ones, scare tactics. We increase security, we bring in more protection, but we don't close. We don't give them the satisfaction. She looked around the room at the adults who'd been protecting her for 9 years. I know you all want to keep me safe, but there are thousands of kids in this country depending on the Amara protocol. If we fold now, if we show that threats work, every one of those programs becomes a target. We have to stand. Even if it puts you in danger? Jasmine asked, tears in her eyes. Especially then, because if I'm not willing to risk everything for this, how can I ask anyone else to? Tank put a hand on Amara's shoulder. You sound like a soldier. I am a soldier, just a different kind of war. The decision was made. School would remain open. Security would increase. The FBI would investigate the threats. Michelle's story would expose the Heritage Defense League's escalation. And 2,000 bikers would descend on Philadelphia to send a message that couldn't be misunderstood. But as they prepared for what was coming, none of them knew that the Heritage Defense League had one final card to play. Something that would test everything Amara had built. Something that would force her to choose between her own safety and the safety of thousands of children she'd never met. The real battle was September 15th, 9 years after the first walk. Amara stood in front of her bathroom mirror, braiding her hair the way her mother had taught her when she was small. She was 16 now, tall and strong, wearing the same little sister jacket she'd received at 7, updated and resized over the years. Today was the 9th annual Courage March, but it was also something else. The Heritage Defense League had made their final move. Not with violence this time. They'd learned that created martyrs. Instead, they'd infiltrated. Planted members in schools with Amara protocol programs. Documented every flaw, every mistake, every imperfect moment. Built a case that the programs were ineffective, expensive, and actually made schools less safe. They'd gotten sympathetic senators to propose the School Safety Reform Act, legislation that would gut Amara protocols and replace them with more traditional that would defund community protection programs nationwide and replace them with increased police presence in schools. It sounded reasonable. It polled well. It would destroy everything Amara had built. The vote was scheduled for today, same day as the march. Not a coincidence. You ready, baby? Jasmine asked from the doorway. She'd taken the day off from the hospital where she now worked as a registered nurse. Nothing would keep her from her daughter's side today. Ready as I'll be. Drove to the meeting point. What they found took Amara's breath away. She'd expected 2,000 bikers like they'd promised. What she got was 10,000. 10,000 motorcycles from 40 states. Every club that had ever been part of the protection programs. Veterans groups. Teachers on bikes. Parents who'd seen the programs work. All united for one final stand. And standing among them, wearing support vests, were 12,000 students. Kids who'd been protected by the Amara protocol. Kids who'd found safety when schools failed them. All willing to march. Tank found her in the crowd. Surprise! How did you? Social media, word of mouth. People understand what's at stake. The vote happens at 2 p.m. We march at noon. Show them what 22,000 voices look like. The march began exactly at noon. Not just to Riverside Elementary this time. Through the entire city. Past every school with a protection program. Past City Hall. Past a federal courthouse. 22,000 people walking in absolute silence, except for the sound of boots and shoes on pavement. Along the route, more people joined. Parents holding signs. Teachers walking out of schools in support. Even police officers, the good ones, who understood that community protection worked, walking alongside bikers they'd once viewed as threats. The march ended at Independence Hall, where the Constitution was signed, where American ideals of freedom and protection were supposed to mean something. Amara stood on the steps, looking out at an ocean of faces. The crowd had grown to 50,000. News helicopters overhead, every major network covering it live. Michelle Foster handed her a microphone. 9 years ago, Amara began, her voice carrying across the massive crowd. I was 7 years old and terrified. I walked into a biker bar and asked for help, because every official system had failed me. Today, I'm 16, and I'm here to tell the United States Senate that if they pass the School Safety Reform Act, they will fail millions of children the same way Riverside Elementary failed me. The crowd erupted in agreement. Heritage Defense League wants you to believe community protection doesn't work. They point to imperfect implementation, occasional failures. They say we need more police, more surveillance, more control. She paused, looking directly at the cameras. But I ask you this, which sounds safer? A school where children are policed and monitored like criminals? Or a school where children are protected and supported by their own community? Amara held up her phone, showing the testimony she'd collected. I have statements from 12,000 students. Every one of them will tell you the Amara Protocol saved them, gave them voice, gave them safety, gave them hope. She pointed to the crowd. These people aren't here because a government program told them to be. They're here because protecting children became personal to them. Because when you know a child's name, see their face, hear their story, you can't look away. You can't ignore them. You can't let systems fail them. Senator Caldwell appeared on a screen set up on the steps. Video call from Washington.
Jefferson, the Senate is watching your march. We're also reviewing the evidence you submitted about the Heritage Defense League's infiltration of our committee. Several members are now under investigation. Amara nodded. Senator, what's the status of the vote? Delayed. 24 hours. Pending further review of your testimony and the current demonstration of public support for community protection programs. It wasn't victory, but it was a chance. Thank you, Senator. We'll be here tomorrow too, if we need to be. The screen went dark. Amara looked at Tank. 24 hours, she said. We need to make them count. What happened over the next 24 hours would be studied in political science classes for decades. Michelle Foster's team released a documentary, 9 years of footage, interviews, testimonies, the entire story of the Amara Protocol from that first walk to this moment. It went viral instantly, 30 million views in 12 hours. Students across the country walked out of schools in solidarity, not violently, just walking out at noon, standing in schoolyards, holding signs supporting the programs that had protected them. Parents flooded senators' offices with calls. Teachers' unions issued statements. Even police unions split, some supporting more police in schools, others acknowledging that community programs had reduced the problems they were called to handle. The Heritage Defense League tried to fight back, paid advertisements, op-eds, pressure campaigns, but they'd lost the narrative. When your opposition includes 10,000 bikers protecting children, it's hard to paint yourself as the good guys. October 16th, 2 p.m. Amara watched the Senate vote on a screen at Independence Hall, surrounded by everyone who'd made this possible. Tank, Jasmine, the 12 original kids, now teenagers and young adults, Michelle Foster, Jerome, Diesel, Chains, thousands of bikers who'd become family. The School Safety Reform Act failed, 62 to 38. Instead, the Senate passed the Community Protection and Student Safety Act, federal funding for programs like the Amara Protocol, federal investigation of organized harassment of students, federal protections for children who report bullying. The crowd around Amara erupted in celebration, crying, cheering, hugging strangers. But Amara stood quiet, tears streaming down her face. We did it, Tank said, pulling her into a hug. You did it, little sister. No, Amara said, looking at the thousands of people who'd stood with her. We did it, all of us. 5 years later, Amara Jefferson graduated from college with a degree in social work and education policy. She was 21 now, and the world had changed in ways she'd never imagined. The Amara Protocol was in all 50 states, required by federal law. Over 15,000 schools had community protection programs. Bullying rates had dropped 43% nationally.
Student mental health metrics were improving. Graduation rates for minority students were at all-time highs. The Heritage Defense League had been designated a hate group. 17 members were serving federal sentences for coordinating attacks on children. Dale Brennan had died in prison from a heart attack. Kyle Brennan was out, reformed, working with at-risk youth. Cody Brennan, now 26, ran a successful anti-bullying nonprofit. He and Amara weren't friends exactly, but they'd made peace. Sometimes the bully and the bullying both grew up to be better than their worst moments. Tank was 62 now, still president of the Iron Horses, still coordinating protection programs, still calling Amara his little sister even though she was tall. Over 100,000 people nationwide. Every October 15th, communities across America walk children to school, celebrating protection, community, and the idea that family wasn't about blood. It was about who showed up. Jasmine had to become a nursing supervisor, bought a house, found love with Jerome, who'd proposed last Christmas. They were getting married in the spring. Michelle Foster won 3 Pulitzers for her decade of reporting on educational inequality and community solutions. Her documentary about Amara had been required viewing in education programs across the country. And Amara? She stood in front of Congress one final time, not as a witness, but as a nominee. President Sarah Williams, the first Black woman president, elected partly on a platform of education reform inspired by Amara's work, had nominated her to lead a new federal agency, the Office of Student Protection and Community Partnership. Ms. Jefferson, Senator Caldwell, now committee chair, asked with a smile, "You're 21 years old. Some say you're too young for this position. What do you say?" Amara smiled. "I say I've been doing this job since I was 7. I'm just finally getting paid for it." The gallery erupted in laughter. More seriously, Amara continued, "Age isn't about years. It's about experience. I've spent 14 years fighting for student safety. I've worked with thousands of families, hundreds of schools, dozens of communities. I've seen what works and what doesn't. I've made mistakes and learned from them. And they've never forgotten what it feels like to be a child who needs protection and can't find it." "Why you?" another senator asked. "Why not someone with traditional credentials?" "Traditional credentials gave us traditional solutions that failed. We need new thinking. We need people who've lived the problem to design the solutions." The vote was unanimous. Amara Jefferson became the youngest federal agency director in American history. At her swearing-in, she wore her little sister jacket. Tank stood next to her holding the Bible she placed her hand on. Jasmine cried happy tears. The 12 original kids attended, all successful now, all protected by the system Amara had fought to build. In her first official statement, Amara announced a new initiative, the National Community Guardian Network. Every school in America would have access to community protection, not just bikers, though they remain central, but veterans groups, faith communities, retired teachers, local businesses. Anyone willing to be trained and background checked could help protect children. 14 years ago, Amara said into the cameras, I walked into a biker bar because I was out of options. Today, I'm making sure no child ever runs out of options again. If you're being bullied, if you're being harassed, if systems are failing you, there will always be someone who shows up. Always someone who protects you. Always someone who says, you matter, you belong, and you deserve to be safe. She looked directly at the camera, speaking to every child watching. I was 7 when I got brave enough to ask for help. You can be any age, any color, any background. If you need protection, it's there. And if you want to be a protector, we'll train you. Because the lesson isn't that I was special. That we all have the power to change things when we choose courage over fear. The march continues. Will you join it? The broadcast ended. Amara walked outside where Tank and her family waited. Your mom would be proud, Tank said. She's not dead, Tank. She's over there eating cake. I met your 7-year-old self, the scared little girl who walked into our bar.
She'd be proud of who you became. Amara looked back at the government building, where she now had an office, where she had power and resources to protect children on a national scale. I'm proud of her too, Amara said. She was braver than I'll ever have to be again. She saved me before I even knew I needed saving. Tank put his arm around her shoulders as they walked toward the celebration. Behind them, 1,000 bikers revved their engines in salute. Ahead of them, a future where every child could feel safe enough to just be a child. The story that started with one scared little girl and a purple crayon note had become a national movement. And somewhere in small towns and big cities across America, children who were scared today would be brave tomorrow. They'd ask for help. They'd find protection. They'd learn that courage comes in all sizes. Because Amara Jefferson had proven that one voice, speaking truth, could change the world. The march was complete, but the journey would never end. This is Top Core. If this story changed how you see courage, if it made you believe that ordinary people can create extraordinary change, if it reminded you that protecting children is everyone's responsibility, then share it. Subscribe if you're new here, because every story we tell is a reminder that heroes don't need capes. Sometimes they just need a purple crayon, a desperate hope, and the courage to walk through a door that scares them. Sometimes the scariest people have the softest hearts. Sometimes the smallest voices create the loudest echoes. And sometimes asking for help is the bravest thing you can do. Thank you for walking this journey with Amara. Thank you for believing that children deserve protection. Thank you for being part of the march. Until the next story, stay brave, stay kind, and remember, you're never